Good afternoon. My name is Michael McGee. I'm the coordinator for the Trauma, Injury Prevention and Outreach at North Kansas City Hospital. Today I'll be talking with you in Health Living series on bike and helmet safety. I'd like to start out with just a little brief history about the bicycle. In 1853, Philip Moritz was the inventor of the first bicycle with pedals. Now, in history, if you look back, it does date back a little bit further than that, where bicycles were first invented with hand pedals. So this is the first bike that was invented with foot pedals, and I thought it was a little bit interesting to share with you all today. Now, as history has gone on, we've certainly come a long way with bicycles. We've invented many different types of bikes for many different uses. And as you can see and depicted in this picture, there are multiple different styles of bikes that are out there and available for riding in today's world. I'd like to show this picture here so that you can kind of see how we commingle these days. And unlike back in the early history, but we now commingle with the motor vehicles and on the roadways. So this may be a slight over-exaggeration of the bikes that commingle again today with our motor vehicles, but it is certainly something that we have seen an increase over the years, and we do share the roads with them. That being said, I'd like to go into a few statistics about bicycles and bicycle fatality facts. In 2019, the National Highway and Traffic Safety Administration there were 846 bicyclists that were killed in traffic crashes. That's a significant number, however, it is a 3% reduction from 2018. Males accounted for 88% of all the bicycle deaths. 20% of the bicyclist death happened between 6 and 9 p.m. We call that the twilight time. That's when the lighting is somewhat difficult and changes perceptions and views of both bicyclists and our motorists. This is not an uncommon statistic to see that our urban areas are comprised of 75% of bicyclist fatalities compared to our rural areas. And again, as that picture depicted, we are in a much more heavily densely populated areas in those regions. Among bicyclists ages 16 and older who were killed in 2019, 21% of those had blood alcohol concentrations greater than that legal limit of 0.08%. Collisions with motorists are the most common cause of a bicycle accident, and these often result in very severe injuries. And this is according to statistics from our National Highway Traffic Safety Administration, also known as NHTSA. Most of these injuries occur as a result of riding at high speeds. The Consumer Product Safety Commission reports that greater than 400,000 emergency department treated injuries were associated with bicyclists in 2019. We'll move on and talk a little bit about the helmets. As you can see, as these two pictures, I like to show the correct way that we should bike with helmets, is depicted on the picture on the right, as opposed to our picture on the left, where the mother is riding actually with multiple riders on the bike, not in the correct seats, and none of the children here are shown wearing any helmets. We do not like to see this. And some helmet facts. Bicycle helmets is the cyclist's best line of defense in reducing head injuries. It does by more than 50%. Bike helmets are important because they can lessen that blow from a direct impact. And when you do have that impact, that protective shell is designed to crack. It allows that energy to spread across the entire surface until it moves to the foam where it's compressed and further absorbed. We like to look for helmets that are certified for biking, and it has the Consumer Product Safety Commission sticker on it. In a short period of time, I will go over a bicycle and look at some helmets, and I'll actually show you where you can find that CPSC sticker. All bike Bicycle helmets manufactured after 1999 must meet that U.S. bicycle helmet standard. Helmets meeting the standard provide protection against skull fractures and severe brain injuries when the helmet is used properly. We'd like you to look for a helmet that fits well. We'll talk next a little bit about helmets and how they fit, how you should fit one on a rider. This is the single most important factor is how those helmets feel and fit. So a little bit about fitting your bicycle helmet. Step one would be the size. We'd like you to measure your head to find your size. Try on several helmets until you find that one that feels right and looks right for you. Then we put the helmet on level onto the head and we adjust the size of the straps or fit the rings until the helmet is snug. So step two is the helmet should sit level on your head and low on your forehead. It should be 1 to 2 finger widths above the eyebrows, as depicted in the picture. Step three, you want to adjust that slider on both straps to form a V shape. It's slightly in front of the ears, and then we lock the sliders. Step four, you center that buckle under the chin. And then as we buckle that chin in step five, we want to have about 2 fingers width of clearance between the strap and the chin. It's best that we do that step in the adjustment with that off the head because it can tend to pinch as you do snug those up. So it does look a little bit better once it's off the head. The final fitting, your helmet should not move. You should open your mouth wide, do a yawn. The helmet should pull straight down on your head. If not, we turn back to step 5 and adjust that chin strap. And then does your helmet rock back and forth more than 2 fingers above the eyebrows? And if so, we unbuckle and we shorten the front strap by moving the sliders forward. Buckle and retighten the chin strap and test again. And then we look for your helmet, does it rock into your eyes? And if so, we unbuckle it again and we tighten the straps and move the slider back towards the ear, buckle and retighten the chin strap, and we test it one more time. Very last step is that we roll the rubber bands down to the buckles. That helps keep those straps in place, and you should have a properly fitting helmet after following these steps. We often talk about when do we replace a bicycle helmet. Knowing when to replace the helmet is equally as important. Helmets are one and done deal. If we have an accident with the helmet, we need to replace that. It's time to retire them. If there's anything uncomfortable about the helmet, if you don't like the way the helmet looks, get a new one. You're more likely to wear it if you like it and you like the way it looks and feels. I've often asked the question, how long does a helmet last? Well, again, it's a matter of fitting, so we base that on age and growth. But there are standards out there that recommend anywhere from 3 to 10 years that we replace those helmets, regardless if they've been in an accident or not. Because our bodies are in sweat and oils that we produce do tend to break down the foam. We're going to talk a little bit about bikes. If you're a seasonal cyclist, we should conduct a quick safety check, each year, each spring before riding, and making sure that your tires are properly inflated, the brakes are working properly, and the seat is adjusted and locked in place. Again, we'll go over a bicycle here in a few minutes and I'll point out some of these discussing. Stay visible. Be sure to place reflective tape on the front and back of the bike, behind the seat, and on the handlebars, the pedal strips, the tire spokes. The bicycle must be equipped with brakes that will enable its driver to stop the bike within 25 feet from a speed of 10 miles per hour on a dry, level, clean pavement. Lubricating the chain is another thing. You might consider taking your bike in for that spring tune-up to one of the local bike shops. Many offer spring tune-ups if you're not so mechanically inclined, but you should have that bike tested out before you begin driving it. So this question is asked a lot of me, what is the right size bike for my child? Well, when we look at that, there are guides that we can use, and they are based on the age and the child's height. But that will determine is the diameter of the outside measurement of the tires in inches. And those range, as you can see, is depicted in the table here, that they range from 12 inches to 24 inches. For the adult, we look at both the height and inseam of the adult, and then that determines the size of bike frame that would be appropriate for that size adult. Safety apparel and devices, these are offered many different types these days. I've got a few photos here that depict some of the actual apparel that's out there and available to you, from lights to reflectors to mirrors to horns. So there's a lot out there available to you. For our younger crowd, we used to look at the training wheels, but, I show another picture here because that is available to the adult who possibly has a little bit of difficulty with keeping your bike balanced. So you actually have those for adults these days as well. But those who wear the high visible clothing, it's appropriate for the lighting, setting, and time of day, along with a bike helmet, are far less likely to be injured or killed while riding a bicycle. So wear reflective clothing and bright colored helmets with reflective tape on them. Make yourself as visible as you can. That will increase and make you safer. So we look at bicycles, and I'm asked the question frequently, what do we do? How do I ride a bicycle safely after dark? Well, there are some rules and regulations by the state of Missouri, and I'll read a few of these to you. You must have a white light mounted on the front of the bicycle or carried by the rider that could be clipped to their chest and visible at least 300 feet. A rear-facing red reflector, at least 2 square inches, or a red lamp should be visible at 600 feet. Reflective material and or lights visible from the front and rear or on any moving part of the bicycle pedals or cranks, or the bicycle's shoes or lower legs need to be seen at least 200 feet. And then reflective materials and or lights on each side of the bicycle or bicycle visible for 300 feet. And again, I'll point some of those out to you. Many times I'm asked questions too about rules of the road. And this is what Missouri law says, basically. Missouri has several laws related to bicycles that were designed to protect the bicyclist. Laws relate to the brakes, which I discussed in the previous slide, reflectors, operation of the bike on Missouri roadways. Before you hit the road on the bike, you should be very familiar with the laws of biking. One in particular is riding a bicycle on the sidewalk within a business district is prohibited. And riding bicycles elsewhere on a sidewalk, the bicyclist first must yield the way of the pedestrian and shall give an audible signal before overtaking and passing the pedestrian. Bicycle riders, when riding upon a street or highway, are granted all the rights and are subject to all the traffic regulations that are applicable to drivers of motor vehicles, except for those that are in their very nature not applied. So I always recommend that we obey the rules of the road and ride safely. Some of the sources from today's discussions come from the National Highway and Traffic Safety Administration, again known as NHTSA. Our Centers for Disease and Prevention, they also have many different topics on bicycling and safety for bicycling. National Safety Council, and then the Missouri State Highway Patrol is another great source. In just a moment, I'm going to step over. We're going to look at the bike and some of the safety devices and kind of reiterate and point out some of the topics I discussed during the presentation. All right, I'd like to start first with our helmets. Again, as I mentioned during our presentation, the helmet is the most important part of before you or your child get on the bike to ride. As far as sizing and correct helmets, there are many to choose from. However, most will have an age, which will give you a starting point at least for that sizing of the helmet. All helmets, as I mentioned, now have the consumer product safety sticker on them, and you need to make sure that your helmet does have that on there. It's also a good idea that there be reflective tape on the helmets. This is another model that's shown, and then we have to have Bell. Both very good helmets. Both have the CPSC stickers on them. And this is for age 14 for adults. And again, they have toddler sizes, but a must. You must wear helmets before riding the bicycles. We talk a little bit more about apparel when we're riding and for safety. I always recommend wearing bright clothing, something with some reflective tape on it. There are many different types of vests and apparel out there for you to choose from, just to make yourself more visible to prevent you and actually increasing your odds for safe driving and riding, and letting that motor vehicle have more visual of the rider, bike rider. Keep that in mind. A few things on the bike itself. I talked about in the spring, you always want to make sure if that bike's been sitting all winter long, that you have that bike checked out, or you check that bike out yourself. Starting with the tires, making sure that they are properly inflated. Most bicycles on the sidewall of the tire will tell you the proper inflation PSI to have for each tire. Make sure your tires are good working. They're not dry rotted, and they're nice and full of air according to the manufacturer for that size tire. Secondly, the brakes we talked about, make sure that they are in good working condition, that they release, don't stick. So again, if that is something you can't do, again, these tune-ups that you can have done at the shop, we'll lubricate those brakes so that they are in good working condition, and we'll stop at the appropriate distances that they should. We talked a little bit about the seat as well. Seat adjustment is important for your size and sizing, but also it's equally important that that seat be locked in a safe setting. So make sure that the seat is locked in place. A couple of the other things, we talked a lot about reflectors. This bike actually has all the reflectors it needs. We have a reflector on the front of the handlebars or the light. We have a reflector on the rear, which could either be a reflector or a flashing light. We have reflectors on the pedals, you see? And then we have reflectors on the spokes, both front and back. Basically, this gives you that 360-degree visibility so that other motorists can see you, especially during those evening hours for riding the bike at night. Another thing we talked a little bit about are the brakes. And if this is a multi-speed bike, which this is, that's another tune-up that can be done at the bike shop, but and the lubrication of the chain. I hope you found this helpful today and give you a little bit of insight on bike safety and the importance. The very biggest part of my presentation is that helmets should be worn by all who ride bicycles. I thank you for your time today, and please be safe out there with your bike.